Welcome to Orange County Power Players, where we spotlight the personal, professional, and financial success stories of OC's top leaders. Here's your host, Danny Flores.
Welcome back to OC Power Players, where I interview some of the most successful people in Orange County. I'm Danny Flores, your host, and today's honored guest is Brandon Kordower, zooming in from Newport Beach. Brandon is the founder and CEO of Aura, a strategic advisory firm dedicated to helping marketing agencies thrive. Brandon is passionate about empowering creative entrepreneurs to unlock the full potential of their financial data and scale with confidence. Growing an agency is an exciting journey, but it brings financial complexities that go beyond the scope of a bookkeeper. At Aura, they specialize in bridging that gap, offering expertise in project-based accounting, strategic financial planning, and operational insights to drive sustainable growth. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you so much for having me, Danny.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got there.
Yeah, so as you kind of mentioned, I'm in a very niche service offering. And so essentially, we help marketing agencies that are about $1 million in revenue, maybe a little bit larger, scale to $5-10 million and beyond. And the way we do that is by allowing them to actually gain valuable visibility into their financial performance. And the way we do that is by technical accrual accounting that typically like a bookkeeper is not able to do. And while a lot of businesses will start with a bookkeeper and then bring on a fractional CFO, a true strategic fractional CFO does not want to be closing the books. They want to be doing analysis and thinking strategically. And so we fill that gap between a low-level bookkeeper and a strategic CFO by bringing accuracy around the financial data so that agencies can actually understand their true margins, understand which of their service offerings are profitable, and then scale effectively off of that information.
Well, that's really interesting because as you're running a business and you're doing different parts of it, I guess it would make all the difference in the world to understand what's making you money and what's not, so that you can double down on that and cut the other loose, right?
Absolutely. What ends up happening, at least in my experience, is a lot of agencies, they grow to a point at around $1 million. And then when you start to grow beyond that, now you need to start making some pretty significant investments into the company. You need to start developing a leadership team. You may need to start building sales and marketing. So now you're going to need acquisition costs in order to acquire new clients. And if you grew the business just off of referrals and work you were passionate about, but you weren't necessarily looking at, is this work generating the right amount of margin for me? As the business grows in top line revenue, it becomes a bigger and bigger challenge to grow that business as the profitability is eroding. And so I want to make sure that agencies treat this like a business, right? Because a lot of agencies are creatives, right? They're emotionally intelligent people. They're very creative minded. A lot of them are not necessarily numbers people. And so they kind of look the other way. And my job is to say, don't look the other way, right? Let's actually make sure you have a healthy, scalable business. And let's make sure you are putting the right efforts into the right places such that you're generating the right amount of margin so you can continue to grow the business healthy.
Now, is it almost as simple as saying, the skill set that took you to get to 1 million is not the same skills or tools that you need to get to the next level?
I mean, I could speak in my own experience, right? Because we are, we're a 7-figure business ourselves, and I could tell you that I was able to grow to 7 figures, and then I hit a wall on my capabilities. And in a professional service environment, which it could be a marketing agency, it could be an accounting firm, it could be an engineering firm, it's very important to understand your margins. And the way that you really understand those margins is through time tracking. And it's a dirty word. A lot of people don't like to talk about time tracking or work in time tracking, but there's so much valuable insight that comes through that. Because through the time tracking data, we're able to determine what margin are you generating per client. And then not only if they're time tracking, but if they're time tracking and then telling us what they're working on for the client, now we can see, okay, well, here's the margin you're generating for the client, but even within your client, here's the different service offerings and those margins. And there's a lot of valuable insight that comes from that information. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't really like to dig and drill down into that information. And the reality is it's very difficult and it requires a lot of technical skill to actually take that data and incorporate it into the financials. But that's what we do. That's our specialty and our skill set. So we take that time tracking data, we align that with payroll data or contractor or freelancer data to basically say in a given month, okay, here's the actual revenue that your agency earned, and then here are your true direct costs against that revenue. So you can actually see here was the margin, and we take out the timing differences because businesses have timing differences. Your customers will pay you at different intervals. You have to pay your contractors or your vendors at different intervals. And a great example of this is payroll. Okay. A lot of people have biweekly payroll, which is every other week. Well, what that inevitably means is that 2 months of the year, you actually have 3 pay periods in a month. So 10 months of the year, you're under-reporting your payroll costs. And then 2 months of the year, you're significantly over-reporting your payroll costs. And so by working with somebody who understands accrual accounting and correct those things, we take out those timing differences to align, okay, here were the actual hours worked in the month, and here was your true payroll cost, regardless of the timing of when you actually process and paid payroll.
Yeah, no, that sounds very important to be able to do that. You basically flatline everything across with accrual accounting. But you also mentioned something that you hit a wall as you grew your business. How did you overcome that as you're building your business?
So my personal wall that I hit was when we grew the business to a certain size. I came to a realization that I had never run a business this large, and I had never needed to manage a team, and I was reaching my own personal limitations of what I was capable of doing. And so I needed to seek mentorship and coaching. And so I started to explore different avenues for how I can get the assistance I needed. And I came across an organization called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. And it was very influential to me because through EO, I was able to now start thinking strategically and working on my business, as opposed to just working in the business, putting out fires continuously. And so now I take a very different approach. I think much more strategically. And I now have developed a leadership team where we actually meet and we have our quarterly goals or rocks, and we determine, okay, what are the next actionable steps that need to be taken? All things in pursuit of the greater good of the organization versus just putting out fires and being in the now day-to-day hustle and bustle that every business has.
So before you started this business, did you have any experience in any other business where you went from a W-2 employee to working on your own?
So my professional experience has always been in outsourced accounting. I was a finance major from Cal State Fullerton, and my goal was to come out of school to be a financial analyst. And what I realized is you actually can't come out of school being a financial analyst. They require 3 to 5 years experience. And so what most finance kids end up doing is they end up getting sales jobs. They end up being a financial advisor or selling life insurance. And I didn't want to do that. So I started exploring accounting as a path because I felt that with my finance background, accounting, I thought the two would work well together. Typically, they're pretty siloed. typically the accountants are over here and the finance people are over here. I thought bringing the two together would give me a unique skill set. And so I actually interned through college at a small bookkeeping firm. And out of school, I went full time into that firm. And through the efforts of the business, we went from doing bookkeeping to more controller CFO work and started working with larger and larger clients. And I developed the skill sets needed through that experience.
Now, how hard was it internally and the stress to say, okay, I'm going to leave a secure job, right? To going on my own, and now you basically you only are able to eat what you kill, so you gotta, there's no fooling around anymore, right? There's no showing up and just doing your work. Now you gotta really buckle down and say, okay, I have to perform. There is no way out here.
It was very stressful. And on top of that, I had a 6-month-old son at the time. But I knew that for me, entrepreneurship was the path. My father was an entrepreneur my entire life. And so I'd always kind of followed him and seen his journey. And actually, I paid my way through college as a car detailer. I had a car detailing business. And so I had a little bit of that experience of like entrepreneurship, grit, work hard. And so I made the decision that, now with a new family growing, I needed to take that next step. And it was a risk, but for me, it was a risk worth taking. And I was very confident in my abilities that I could always go back and get a job again if I needed to. But I had given myself enough runway to try to make this work. And I'm very glad that I made that decision.
Yeah, but I think you always have to have plan A. There's no plan B. It's like, if you burn the boats, like they say, burn the boats, and you just have to do it. Somehow you end up doing it, right? You just got to be relentless and not giving up.
It's entrepreneurship is not for everyone. It is a lot of stress. It is hard work. There were many years that I worked 80-plus-hour weeks consistently. I wasn't there as much as I wish I could have been for seeing a lot of my kids growing up, which that was a sacrifice that I made. And so I go to say that, but it's really not for everybody. If you feel that you want to be in charge of your destiny, if you can be very hardworking, I think the other thing that's a really important skill set of being a successful entrepreneur is you have to be not only confident, but you have to be good at sales. You have to be able to sell yourself. You have to sell that confidence that you know what you are doing. I think that's the first key to successful entrepreneurs is, can you sell? And then I think the second thing is, can you know your limitations, or can you understand where you need to get out of your own way? Because I see that as kind of the next limiting factor for entrepreneurs in hitting a ceiling, is not, thinking that they always know best, not relying on any subject matter experts to help guide or mentor them on their path. And that's something that I became aware of and made a conscious effort to seek mentorship and guidance to help fill the gaps and the blinders of where I knew I had reached my limitations.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And that's actually a really smart thing to do, is to basically say, hey, you know what? I'm good up to a certain point. I need help from somebody who has more experience that can guide me through the next point and build a more sustainable business, and learning to work on the business, not in the business.
Absolutely, right? We as entrepreneurs, we're the ones that found the business and we grow it to a certain size. But at some point, we need to step out of our own way and start to create and develop a leadership team around us that can handle these things, because there's only so many hours in the day. And if we're too much in the weeds working on minutia, then we're not able to work on the business or on these strategic things that are really so important to ensuring that the business will continue to grow successfully. And it kind of goes full circle to what I like to do with my agency clients, as I like to come in with this place of, hey, let us be the subject matter experts on the finance side and let us guide you on where we see the data telling us on where you should be taking this business. And by doing that, and by taking empirical data, not just your gut and not just a hunch, but actually letting the data support your decision making, you're going to make better decisions and you're going to have better outcomes.
I think right there is key. Sometimes we would like to make decisions based on emotion. And if we can learn not to make any decisions based on emotion, but let the numbers tell us. And if you're thinking about one versus the other, you can just model it together side by side, and your decision is already made for you.
Absolutely. And I don't want to say that the gut is always wrong. Look, the gut is what gets you to where you are today. However, I think it does become really important to start seeking data to either reinforce or to guide your decision making, because when we're taking these risks and we're making these investments, right? As I kind of mentioned, business gets a little over $1 million. Now you have to start developing a leadership team. You have to start making some pretty significant investments into the business. And when you are spending thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to help fuel growth, you really want to know that you're going to be generating the right ROI on that kind of investment.
Right.
And then on the other side, if it's not working out, you want the data to support, hey, maybe we need to pivot, right? And not just double down on this, but the data is showing us that if we continue to go this path, we're just going to burn more and more cash.
Right. And that's either going to hurt you, or if you're able to pivot to grow from there. Yeah, that's so important in having a business. It's not just glamorous, right? How we see on social media, and oh yeah, happy, the cars and the parties and whatnot. It's like all the grit and the hard work that you have to do on the back end to be able to get there.
Yeah, and business is a tale of failure, right? Every day is almost a failure. It's the question of, can you learn from those failures? And then can you do something different next time? If you're continuing to fail and not learning from those mistakes, that's where it becomes impossible to grow a business. But yes, it is not easy. And I definitely would not, I like to support entrepreneurship for those that are seeking it, but I do like to let them know that it's not all unicorns and rainbows, right? There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of stress. You have to be able to handle that stress. You have to be a glass half full kind of person, because if you're typically a pessimistic or half empty person, you are not going to enjoy entrepreneurship.
Right. You got to have nerves of steel, basically.
Absolutely.
To be able to survive.
Absolutely.
And try to have fun at the same time, I guess. You know what I mean?
You do. You have to make fun of it. And, one of the things that's important to me is that building a business where my team is happy and wants to stay, because just looking at the economics of it, right? If I have a lot of turnover in my business, that's very expensive and costly. So what I want to do is I want the best work-life experience possible for my staff. And that's going as far as one of our big initiatives right now is moving to a 4-day work week. So my hope is that by early Q1 2026, we've actually implemented a 4-day work week. The point of that is you want to have fun, you want to create a good environment, and you want people to want to come into that environment and stay and not leave, right? Especially your A players.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense in keeping your people, because it costs so much money to train them, and so hard to find them. Like you said, the A players make it like how they want to come to work, and they want to be productive at work at the same time.
Yes. And another thing to keep in mind is a lot of times your A players can end up being 3 or 4 times more productive than your B players. So when you have those A players, you want to find what makes them tick and what's important to them. If work-life balance is important to them, make sure you are emphasizing that. If they're financially motivated, create a compensation structure where they are getting compensated for delivering more for you.
Right.
Because as I kind of mentioned, somebody, if I have a staff member who's able to do a 40-hour work week in 25 hours, bless them. I'm so happy for them. Now it's up to them at that point. Do they want to value their work-life balance and continue on that? Or would they like to work a 40-hour work week and have the opportunity to significantly enhance their take home? And those are the things I think about with my staff is, giving them that option of, do you want greater financial security or do you like work-life balance? Because in today's world, especially with the younger demographic, they are more valuing work-life balance. And so you want to understand what's important to them and make sure you're aligning their goals with yours as well.
Right. It's not just about us anymore. And it shouldn't have been, but it's like we learn, right? We learn as entrepreneurs how to motivate people and give them what they need. Now, did you learn all of this through the EO organization, or how did you figure all this out? Because there's a lot of good things in there about running a business and taking care of your staff.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, there's 8 years of sweat equity, right? So there's a lot of learnings along the way. Definitely, yeah, EO has really helped me think more strategically. It has helped me understand how to kind of create an 8-figure plus business, which is where I'm on my path to go into and what I'm aspiring for. But I would say that really from an employee perspective, from a work-life balance perspective, those are things were always important to me from day one, because I knew that when I wanted to start my business, I wanted to learn from some of the other places that I had worked at to see what did I like and didn't like, and then incorporate that into my organization. And so it was always really important to me that, look, accounting isn't sexy, right? But I want to create the best work environment possible and create a lot of flexibility, because that's the other thing, is that I have 3 small kids. I understand how it is when you have to juggle pickups and sports and sickness, right? And so creating that flexibility as well, because some people work better at night, some people work better in the mornings, and allowing people to have that flexibility to say, hey, as long as the work gets done, really don't care. And we're not going to micromanage when you are performing that work. And so I think a lot of that flexibility and just showing you care and appreciate really goes a long way into building rapport and really create an environment where people want to stay and want to help continue in the success of the business.
Now, do you have work from home staff, or does everybody have to come to the office? Because I know that's a big thing from COVID. The whole work environment kind of shifted a little bit with that.
Yeah, so we were very lucky in that prior to COVID, we had already started a hybrid remote schedule. And so we had kind of already developed those processes. So when COVID did happen, we were able to basically say, okay, you could go work from home. What we have found is that people like the flexibility of working from home. And so I'm in my office right now, but I have one other person in here with me, right? Even though we could fit 10 plus people. And so for me, I think it really came down to, is the work getting done? And if the work's getting done, do I care if somebody's here physically in the office or at home? I don't. And we still get together as a team at least once a month so that we could see each other, we can build rapport, we can have fun, we can break bread. But I don't have an expectation that people have to be here in the office. I don't need to micromanage them in that regard. Now, that said, we see that as a privilege. And so if there was a staff member who wasn't delivering the way that we need them to, then yes, we are going to make them need to come into the office because they might need some mentorship, they might need some guidance and support. But short of that, I'm happy to let my team work from home. They don't have to commute. They can work in their underwear for all I care. And so, people just like that flexibility. So when there was a real big push to start going back to the office, that was something that I didn't want to force on my staff.
Right. Well, it sounds like things are going really well for you, and congratulations on what you've built and what you're building. Now, as an entrepreneur, we don't always just think about what we're doing currently. We also want to think about diversification and maybe diversifying and passive investments aside from the business that we do, to be able to continue to grow our wealth and potentially establish ourselves as for retirement. What are your thoughts on
I mean, I think it's really important. What I will say is that I'm still definitely in growth mode. So I'm still reinvesting a lot of my profitability back into my business as we're growing. But I do think that it is really important to diversify in that way, to invest in whether it's stocks, real estate, and to your point, diversification, not putting all your eggs into one basket. And even if it's real estate, maybe you sprinkle some commercial, residential. It's not just all one or the other. Diversification is key. I do think with our tax code and with the pending reinstatement of some of the tax cuts, which we're starting to phase out, real estate is very attractive. There's something called cost segregation, which if somebody listening has not heard of, I highly recommend they look into cost segregation because it allows you to front load a significant amount of tax deduction up front, which you can carry forward. And so,
Right.
but yeah, no, I think these things are important. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that your business is also an asset. It's an investment. And so what can
Right.
you be doing to increase the valuation on your business? Even if you have no plans to ever exit or sell that business, grow your business like you plan for an exit. Because what is that going to do? That's going to give you the highest multiple possible. It's going to generate the most profitable business. And then by osmosis, the business will also learn to run without you, which then gives you the ultimate flexibility to determine where and when do you want to put your efforts and
Right.
not be burdened to being a part of the business necessarily, because valuation comes from a business that is self-sustaining without the founder needing to be there to
Right.
ensure that the business is continuing.
That's when private equity start noticing your business, and those are the type of businesses those equity firms like to purchase, basically.
And that's when your multiple goes from maybe 3, 4 EBITDA to 10, 12 plus EBITDA, which is a significant amount when you decide that it's time to retire. And so think about your business like an investment and treat it like an investment. Don't bloat it up with unnecessary expenses. Make sure you've got healthy working capital, right? Run a business like you plan to exit, even if you don't. I think those are some very sound advice I had heard, and I consider the same as I'm running my own organization.
Right, exactly. No, that definitely makes sense. You just never know, right? Even if you're not going to sell, maybe you're going to apply for a credit line or something, right? So you always have to be ready to have your options there.
And you bring up a good point, which is that always be ready for a rainy day. I find a lot of businesses that need the working capital when it's too late and they're not going to be attractive to get it. Always have as much line of credit availability as you possibly can get, even if you feel like you don't need it. Because as we've even seen in the last week with the stock markets, right? There's a lot of volatility out there, and you want to be prepared for any possible situation that can come your way. And having access to as much liquidity and working capital as possible will allow you to weather any pending storm that might be coming.
Right. Get it when you don't need it. That's when you
Absolutely.
can get it. Because when the capital markets are jittery, nobody's getting anything done.
That's right. Very sound.
Yes. So as we wrap up our interview, we're a quarter into 2025. What does the rest of the year look like for you? What's exciting in the horizon?
So this was the first year of us turning away from just referral business to really developing our sales and marketing efforts to really go after our TAM, or our total addressable market. And I'm really excited to see that those efforts are panning out. We have found a paid ad strategy, which is starting to work. And we're starting to get leads in from people that didn't know us. And so that to me is the key to unlocking potentially infinite growth, because when you're at the mercy of a referral, first of all, we couldn't decide who was the right kind of client for us, right? We just had to take what business was coming our way.
Right.
And second of all, there's only so many opportunities. It just depends on how many referrals you get. So now that we've built a model, a paid ad model, that I know that I spend a certain amount and it generates a lead for me, and I know I can convert off of those, once again, knowing the data, I know that as I increase that ad spend, I can then watch those lead opportunities grow. And that to me is how we're going to aggressively scale this business. And, right now we're a little over 2 million. My hope is that within less than 5 years, we're at 10 million. And I think
Right.
we're going to get there based on this strategy and seeing it come to fruition.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thanks, Brandon, for sharing so much of your insights in what you've done. I mean, that's the true path of an entrepreneur, starting from zero and being able to scale up, being able to learn and continue learning, right? As each phase comes up. Now, if somebody's watching and somebody would like to talk to you, maybe they can help you, maybe you can help them, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can reach out to us. Our website is www.auracfo.com. Please reach out to me on there. If you enjoyed this conversation and you would just love to talk entrepreneurship, I'm very passionate about it and would love to just have a conversation. There's definitely a lot of times along the way where I've had to learn the hard way of things, and I wish if somebody had told me different or advised me different, I could have saved on some of those errors. And then likewise, there were so many times that I was able to mentor for some really great entrepreneurs that gave me a lot of great experience shares that I think really helped me develop in ways that I wouldn't have been able to myself. And so I think, we're definitely in this community together. Whatever we could do to help each other out, I'm definitely an advocate for, and would love to speak with any of you.
Great, great. Thanks so much, Brandon, for coming on and sharing such great wise advice and wisdom. And to our audience, please go to ocpowerplayers.com and don't forget to follow us on your favorite channel. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Danny.
Thanks for listening to Orange County Power Players. Want to share your success story? Apply to be a guest at ocpowerplayers.com/guest.